Hi, my name's Darren and I'm going to take you through CVs, applications and cover letters. So the first thing to know about CVs and application forms is that they're not just a list of jobs or a list of experiences or a list of qualifications. They're actually a really highly effective sales document and you're the product that you're selling. It's important to remember that employers receive a really high volume of CVs and applications for most of the jobs that they advertise for. So it's really important that you spend time and effort on each CV and application. Employers don't spend a lot of time reading CVs and applications, so you need to make it really easy for them to pick out the key points from your CV or application form that mean that you're the right person for the job. You have to make sure that you're selling yourself and you're telling the employer that you're the right person for the job. Before you even start on your CV or application form, there are a few things that you need to do first. Firstly, you need to make sure that you're reading the job profile or job description and the job advert thoroughly. What they tell you are the requirements of the job and exactly what you need to demonstrate in your CV or application form. What you should also be doing is researching a bit about the company or the organisation. So have a little look at their website, have a look at their social media pages, looking the news. Some organisations are in the news regularly. What you'll find out is a bit more about their values, a bit more about what's important to them, and more about what you should be highlighting on your CV or application form. As we go through, I'll explain to you what you need to put in a CV and application form, and what you'll find is that it's a lot of effort. When you complete a CV or application form, you have to tailor it for each job and each organisation you're applying for. So you want to make sure that you're putting your energy in the right place. So the kind of key points that we need to cover is what is on a CV? What are the sections that you will have as part of your CV or application form? So the first bit is your contact details. That'll be asked for you on your CV and application form. Make sure they're accurate. Make sure you're putting your full details. If you've got an email address that you're including, make sure it's professional. We don't want any rude words or inappropriate terminology. Make sure you've got a professional email address. The next bit is a quick summary. So a summary about you. Who are you? Why are you applying for this job? And what is your current situation at the moment? You'll see that more on a CV than an application form, and I'll explain that a bit as I go along. You'll also have bits about your employment history or achievements. I'll not talk about that just yet. I'll come back to that in a second. You'll also be asked to list your qualifications. So what have you achieved so far? What qualifications do you have and which ones are pending? This can also include things like your Duke of Edinburgh awards. On a CV, you can also include references or recommendations. On an application form, they might ask you to make sure you're putting the specific names and details of people. And again, I'll come on to that shortly. The main chunk of your CV or application form is going to be a bit about employment history and achievements. What this is a list of all of your experience to date. So that can include full-time jobs, part-time jobs, work experience, shadowing, long-term, short-term opportunities. What we're looking for under each bit of employment history or each work experience are 4 to 6 points about what you did, what you learned, what skills you developed. Just 4 to 6 points. Keep it brief and keep it succinct. One question that we get asked quite a lot is, what if I don't have work experience? What if I've never had a job or done any type of shadowing? That's absolutely fine. So instead of calling it work experience, call it a section on skills and achievements. Put in things that you've done at school, in extracurricular activities, in teams. You'll have a lot more than you think you do. So at school, you've probably been part of group projects. You have probably worked to deadlines, more so than a lot of people in the working world. School people tend to have a lot of experience working to deadlines. You'll also have experience working for customers or delivering on customer expectations, only your customer might have been your teacher. What you need to do is just make it very clear about what skills you developed and think about how they are transferable to the workplace. Make sure that you spell it out to the recruiter. As discussed, on a CV, you can include references or recommendations. On an application form, they might ask you to complete this as standard. On a CV, you can always save space and just say, references are available upon request. On an application form, you might not always have the choice. However, it's your choice to include those on a CV if you wish. What you could do is make a list of names, contact details, and their relationship to you. What we do say is, though, that before you write somebody's name on your CV and submit it to a recruiter, that you get their permission. Another option that you could do is ask in advance for some quotes from your teachers, from group leaders, from managers at work experience that you've had, and ask them to give you a small quote that you can include on your CV, which gives recruiters a highlight a bit about who you are, what you've done, and why you would be a good choice. It's not obligatory, but it could be a good selling point and can make you stand out from the crowd. So, you've got all your information compiled together. You have lists of your work experience or skills and achievements. You've got your qualifications, your education, your references, your summary. What next? That's just a lot of information. You have to think next about the style of your CV. So what does it look like? Is it professional? Does it look adult, for lack of a better word? What we expect is that it's usually on a plain piece of paper, that the font and colour font that you use is very simple, professional, think Arial, think black font. There are exceptions to that, so worth thinking about again about the company that you're applying for. So are you applying for a creative company, a marketing company? Because then you might have to think a little bit differently about the style of your CV to stand out. But for most instances, you're looking at a very straightforward professional CV. It's worth also noting that some other countries have different format expectations for their CVs as well. So please do a little bit of research again about the company that you're applying for, the job that you're applying for, and think about the recruiter themselves. Who are they and what are their expectations? On your CV as well, you want to think about the language that you use. Are you using professional language? You want to also think about the order and the layout of your CV. Is it straightforward? Is it prioritized? So if you're looking at a job profile or a job description and they're really making it clear that they want a certain qualification or a certain skill, put that right at the top. Make sure it's prominent. Put it in bold if necessary. Think about how a recruiter is going to be reading it, the order they're going to be reading it in. Does it make sense? Does it flow and is it easy to read? A tip is to get someone else to read it for you. What feedback do they have for you? What skills and experience do they pick up on most throughout your CV? And is that what the recruiter is really going to be looking for? Another thing that you want to think about is the spelling and grammar. They're really simple things to get right. When a recruiter has a high volume of CVs and applications, they're going to be looking at the really small detail when they're selecting someone to interview. So spelling and grammar are really important. Use a spell check. Get someone to look over for you and just check and check again before you submit. Again, when you're writing the CV and you're ordering it, make sure that you're checking it against the job description and the job advert. What you do not want to be doing is submitting a standard CV for every job that you apply for, and for sounding like a broken record. The most important thing is that your CV and your application are tailored to the job you're applying for and to the organisation you're applying for. So again, when looking at the order and layout and wording of your CV, make sure that it relates to the job you're applying for. Application forms are being used more and more. CVs are really important. Lots of companies will ask for CVs to be submitted, but more and more are also asking for online applications. Sometimes they're online, sometimes they have a Word document that you can print, complete and resubmit, but most will have online applications. When completing an application form, make sure that you're answering all the questions. You can't just skip some. There's a reason those questions are on the application form and the recruiter will be looking at your responses. Make sure they're full, make sure they're detailed, use the word count, and make sure that you're not just giving blanket statements. What we want is as much detail and example as possible. Again, in similar advice to a CV, use the same language as the job description, as the organisation, as the advert. Use that almost like a checklist. Go through and say, okay, have I included that requirement? Have I included that particular behaviour they're looking for? Have I included that skill? Use it as a checklist. And a little tip here is that some organisations also have guaranteed interview schemes. Have a look on their website, see if they do. Some organisations have guaranteed interview schemes for some jobs, for some people of certain ages. So make sure you're looking for that before you submit your application form. On online application forms, usually there'll be a tick box that says, are you wanting to be considered under the guaranteed interview scheme? Say yes if that guaranteed interview scheme applies to you, because you will be guaranteed an interview if you meet all the requirements. The next bit I'm going to cover are cover letters and personal statements. I'm using two terms there. So a cover letter is what you would attach along with your CV. A personal statement is usually what it's called on an application form. For an application form for a personal statement, usually the question is around, tell me a bit about why you have applied for this job or why you are the right fit for our organisation and this role. That's essentially what both a cover letter and a personal statement are. They're not a repeat of your CV or application form. They're more about a guide through your experience, a guide to you. And again, broken record, I know, but make sure that your cover letters and your personal statements are tailored to each organisation and to each job that you apply for. I have seen many cover letters and personal statements that talk about a different organisation altogether, they use the wrong terminology, and employers can tell the difference when they're not tailored. So what is the format of a cover letter and a personal statement? Firstly, they're an introduction to you. So give an introduction to yourself. What's your personal circumstances? Are you still at school? Are you in higher education? Are you currently employed or unemployed? Just give a bit of an introduction about who you are. The next bit is to talk about your motivations. So why have you applied for this job? Why this organisation? Why this particular role? What's drawn you to it? What's interested you about it? How does it connect to your story so far? Again, use the job description, job profile, the job advert. Use that like a checklist to go through. Make sure that when you've included something in your CV, that it's highlighted in your cover letter and personal statement and made very clear. So while on your CV, you might just have a list of particular skills that you developed. What you want to do in your cover letter is say, okay, as part of this job or work experience, I developed X skill, and this is how it's important to the job that I'm applying for. This is why it's important to you. This is particularly important if you're putting a lot of transferable skills in your CV, because they won't automatically or immediately stand out to a recruiter. A recruiter doesn't always have the time to connect the dots. They don't always have the time to say, okay, that person has done a particular thing at school, which is equivalent to this particular thing that they could have done at work, which is relevant to the job. What you want to do is do that for them. Make it really easy for them on the cover letter and say, okay, I've mentioned this transferable skill. This is how it transfers and translates to your organisation and the job. What you also want to do with a cover letter and a personal statement is make it personal. Again, I come back to my first ever point. This is a sales document. You're the product. Put a bit more about your personal qualities. Why are you the right person for the job? Why should they pick you personally? Again, they're going to see a high volume of CVs, cover letters, application forms. Your cover letter is the time to stand out. So tell them a bit more about why you as a person are the right fit. It seems like I've gone through quite a lot to include on your cover letter. It is a detailed document, but a recruiter doesn't want to spend time going through pages upon pages of cover letters. Make sure that you keep it brief and succinct. Keep everything relevant. Don't talk about something that isn't relevant to the job or the organisation, and ideally stick to one page of A4. So in summary, what are my most important points and my takeaway points from this? Make sure that you're tailoring your CV, application and cover letter for the job that you're applying for. The best tip that I can give is to make sure you thoroughly understand the job profile or job description, the advert and the organisation that you're applying for. Understand them in detail. What's important to them? What's important to this job? What are the real requirements? What are the values of that organisation? And thread that into your CV, application, and cover letter. Use those job descriptions that are given to you as a checklist. So as a recruiter, what I do when I receive CVs is I have a job profile or job description next to me. I have your CV side by side, and I'm comparing. So it is a tick box exercise that I do. So do the same. Use the job description, use the same wording, put bold in there, put headers, put whatever you think fits well with the organisation and that job. Make sure that as a recruiter, my job's easy and I pick you.